Hello, thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segala, I'll be your moderator. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. So a lot of our programs kind of reflect on the needs of the public and taxpayers, and we try to provide a format and invite experts to give us information that we can find out what's really happening in government, and so we can better understand what's going on. This show is no exception. Our guest is Doug Oliver, our county building official. He's in charge of the building department, and there are some changes coming up. Doug, welcome to our program. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And now, you've had some experience in this sort of thing. You were building official in Tuolumne County before. Is that correct?
Yes, I was with the building department for 12 years as part of Tuolumne County, and prior to that, I was a building official for Hollister for a short time. I worked as a private contractor through a company called Precision Inspection, so I did a lot of touring and fitting into other jurisdictions and adapting to how they managed building construction in their areas throughout Monterey area. And the Central Valley. So I've had a lot of experience in historic buildings, rural communities, and as part of my 12 years with Tuolumne County, I did participate in the damage assessment from the rim fire. So I was on the ground right after the fire, viewing what fire does to structures, and so it's interesting that we get to talk about the fire safe regulations now, because I've seen what happens when there's good fire regulations and what happens when there's bad fire regulations. So we can put some perspective to it.
Well, that's interesting. You're also my neighbor in Copperopolis, and you have chickens, and so do I.
Yeah.
So we're the two people that have chickens in our area.
I think we've set a trend. There's a lot of people in the area that are.
They're more getting chickens.
Yeah, everybody's getting chickens now. We can't give away the eggs anymore. Everybody has some.
Well, I cut mine down to 2 chickens,
Ah.
which is 2 eggs a day, and it's just perfect for my wife and myself. We have an omelet every day. Well, anyway, we might as well go into the subject here. The fire safe change. What are the fire safe changes?
Well, the Public Resources Code 4290 is our fire safe standards that apply to new subdivisions and building construction in California. The regulations that are adopted from that have been revised, and shortly they're going to be adopted, and they are improving the level of access for fire departments to rural lots. In addition, they're providing better egress out of high fire severity areas. So there's several layers to them, and because of how fast they're being developed, there's a lot of rumors that have started generating about them, and so I had planned on discussing some other items with you, but I wanted to reach out to the public today on this item so that we could dispel any of the rumors, because right now there's some, the biggest rumor right now is that on July 1st, all construction in the county is going to be, ended, which is not true in any stretch of the imagination. Construction will continue.
No, that's July 1st this year?
This year, yes. But that's not, construction will continue. Our department has, from the moment I got here especially, has been focused on facilitating construction, not becoming a barrier to it.
Right.
That's what the board had resonated when when they selected me for this job, and so I'm carrying the banner for this board and for this community that there are ways to build, and we don't need to be an impediment to it. So in reading these regulations, which they'll be adopted June 9th by the Board of Forestry, and they will become effective October 1st. So we have about a 4-month window, and because of some legislation that came out last year that directed the Board of Forestry to have regulations before fire season, when they go into effect, they'll be retroactive back to July, but only in a very narrow scope.
Okay.
And there's a lot of flexibility built into it. So our purpose is going to be getting out ahead of it, training the public, and then coming back through on the ones that were already issued and working with them to get things on the books. Because a lot of what we're really talking about in these changes to the regulation are notifying the fire agencies of the condition of roads and the condition of properties, so that if there is a wildfire, they know what resources to send to the right places and to be the most effective. So we're not going to be going back on people that have open permits and saying stop your job. That's not going to happen. So for the public out there, it is not in any way going to be a significant detriment to construction, especially if we get out ahead of it and teach the public how to use the rules rather than going into it without a frame of knowledge, because that causes delays in time, and that means construction delays or delays in increases the cost.
Right. Well, the cost is probably one of the main considerations that people have. We have to make the driveways bigger, I think, to accommodate large trucks, fire engines and such. And then we have to increase the size of roads for people to escape the area. Is that correct?
Well, what they've done is they've defined things better. In new developments, they're requiring wider roads. They're mandating 20-foot roads. They're mandating reductions in the slope so that people don't lose traction. There's a series of rules that are in effect for new roads, but there's also a recognition that older roads need to be improved, but not to the same level, because one, it will never get done if you can't afford to, and two, many of the fire districts, or all the fire districts, have the right equipment locally for what they're dealing with out there in a fire. So there's some flexibility. If it's an existing road, in many cases 14-foot wide is acceptable. In areas where they're recovering from a burn that already happened, there's some additional flexibilities as far as length of roadways, the width, the ability to have turnouts so that vehicles can pass. So there's a lot of things that if you try and read the document yourself, it gets confusing and it looks like everything is going to ramp up the cost on your project. But we'll be putting it into a streamlined pattern and developing handouts that essentially guide you through it and give you the ability to see from the lot that you've purchased if the road already complies, or if it doesn't comply, what one or two things you may have to do to make it comply. It might be something as little as a road sign that says, hey, there's a dead end 100 feet up. Or this bridge is only rated for this many pounds. If that's all you have to do, well, if you know that in advance, you won't be scared away from building on that property.
I see. Now, I understand there's other considerations. It has to do with combustible fuels, and some structures are more prone to fire than others. And I wonder, is there anything with these rules that get into that area? In
fact, there is. There is a component that requires a building on any given lot in the county. It used to be limited to anything over an acre, but it applies to all lots. If you're going to put a new structure down, it has to be 30 feet away from the property line. that doesn't mean you can't build. What it means is if you're closer than 30 feet, you have to have trade-offs in your construction, which could mean something as simple as green belts or other fuel reductions to make sure that fire won't get to the building. But you can also add hardening features to the building beyond what's already in the code to prevent fire damage, and also there's the ability to build non-combustible walls beyond the building to shelter it from radiant heat. So those are just a couple of the examples.
What about stucco walls?
Stucco walls are part of the ignition resistance that one of the options that's required now for standard building construction. So what I would say is, as an example, in addition to that, we would add hardening and maybe provide fire-resistant sheetrock on the interior so that maybe flame can't radiate through and enter the building, or provide less windows on that side of the building, because windows transmit a lot of heat. Many of the fires that start in a home when there's radiant heat from wildfire is because the windows heat up so much that the drapes catch on fire.
Wow, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in the old days when they had tremendous fires in little towns, they went to masonry construction and steel shutters and steel doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't suppose we do that now, but I imagine some sort of shutter or some kind of covering that would reflect the heat would seem to make sense.
Yes, and options like that are on the table. Where any new product, any old product that is proven to work, between our department and that fire district, we can review those for exceptions and see if those will work in order to allow that building to be placed where the owners want it.
Yeah, after all, we all want to have the least damage possible in a case of fire.
Mm-hmm.
So the now this information, will you have it on a website?
Yes. Once the regulations are adopted, we'll be moving forward with creating handouts that will be on our website, advertising on our website when we'll be having public training. In addition to that, what I plan to do with the consent of the board is to work with the other departments in the county and the local fire districts to develop a GIS layer that the public can see, that will rate all of the roads in the county and identify which ones are good, which ones need repair, and to what extent. That's going to help the local builder look at, lot by lot, if it's even feasible to start designing their plans. If the road is so cost prohibitive, they may not want to spend the $3,000 to $8,000 designing the building. But if they find that the roadway is acceptable, then they'll invest and they'll build. So we want to give them the information before they spend the money on development.
So that would be Public Works.
Public Works will be involved, yes. They'll be helping us. 600 miles of our county roads are county maintained roads. The other 1,200 miles are private roads. So we'll be working with the fire districts on proving out those roads and creating a map that everyone can use, which benefits the local fire districts as well, because they'll be, if they are called to support another district, they know what equipment to send because they know the quality of the roads in the other districts. So it'll be a really good information sharing option that not just the public has access to, but our own fire districts and
Right.
CAL FIRE as well could see it on our website. So my hope is that we can move forward and have something by October, at least something that we can use to help the community, if not have it on the webpage already for the community to use.
Right. It's pretty hard for the public to remember October, remember something till October, but if this were October, what website would they go to?
Well, the information would be shared on the building department webpage.
Okay.
I would also be reaching out to our administrative office to see if the Office of Emergency Services might carry a link.
Oh, that makes sense.
There's a handful of departments that we could share this link on, and so I haven't really thought through that part of it yet. I just got And this idea started about a week ago that we needed to get ahead of this.
Yeah.
And so the plan is still in its formation. Hopefully by the 8th at the next board meeting, I'll have a much clearer picture to give to the board of supervisors. But we got about 80% of a plan right now.
See, when you watch Taxpayer Alert, you get the first word. So if I were a builder, it seemed like I'd be concerned about what needs to be done in regards to roads, because the cost of the homes going to reflect my costs. I can't sell homes without a profit. So and so as a builder, it seemed like what I need to do is contact the building department, and then if there's a map showing what needs to be done to the roads, I need to access that, and then probably consult with you or the Department of Public Works as to what needs to be done to the roads, so I can build my development. Does that make sense?
Yeah, essentially you've laid out the process in an ideal situation. If we have the technology built for the public,
Right.
They want to purchase a lot and build to sell. They look it up on the web page, say this is the address. They say, okay, here's the road it's connected to. Is this a good road? Okay, well, no, there's 5 or 6 things that need to get fixed, so let's build that into the cost. Or is that too costly?
Right.
If we can't get to that target, then we have to have a plan B. And a plan B is something like the contractor wants to build. He took a drive up there. I don't know if that road's good. They come into the office. They find out if it's a private or public road, and then they know which department to go to.
Right.
If it's public, then they go talk to Public Works. If it's private, they come in and say, hey, can I build? Is this road good enough? And if we don't know, we drive it with them and we let them know what needs to be done. If there's an exception, it can be applied for through the fire district. We work with them on developing that exception, or we just let them know here are the things that that will need to be improved. Make that part of your project. The hardest part about this, though, is some of the improvements are not going to be on their parcel. And hopefully we can stay within the easements and the right-of-ways to make the improvements, but there is a chance that occasionally you may end up having to put a turnout on a narrow road that's on a neighbor's parcel. That's a negotiation with that parcel owner,
Right.
and whenever you do something like that, there's always a cost.
Right.
And so we want to work with the community wherever possible.
Right.
To inform them of what steps may add cost before they decide to get that building permit. So, the plan B is a lot more work up front for the building department. Often, we give that information. They don't come in and get the permit right away. It might take a year or two to develop. So I got to have trained staff at all times that can zip out there, meet them, give them the best information possible, and then come back in and plug in with the rest of the work for the projects that already are permitted.
Will the cost for, you probably don't know yet, but will the cost for a building permit go up?
No. I was going to say not, but we actually adopted a new fee structure that goes into effect July 10th. We streamlined the fee structure. It used to be a combination of several fees that represent each phase of the plan review from the moment you drop it off,
Right.
plan check, inspections. Now what we've done is we've streamlined the process. We've combined it into one fee. You pay half of it up front to apply to cover the plan check costs. And by doing so, we streamlined it to where people can get building permits online, and you can get estimates online. Once we have the technology in place, it's going to streamline things really well. And because of the reductions in our workload through streamlining inspection processes and plan check processes, we can incorporate this in without seeing an increase in our overall fees.
Well, that's good news.
We try.
Taxpayer likes that. Now, it looks like what needs to be done, well, you mentioned already that there's exceptions to this, and you need to negotiate to make sure that the overall effect will be fire safe, even though it doesn't exactly conform to a certain diagram.
Right. Prior to this iteration of the regulations, you had a very basic appeal template where you'd fill out a form and just say, this item doesn't work. And then they offer a suggestion for an alternate. I would review it. My office would take a look at the impacts in the state codes. Then I'd reach out to the fire chief of that district and ask them if they're comfortable with it. And then if we are both in agreement, we would issue the exception. Excuse me. Now under the new regulations, what they've done is they still allow the exception, but they've enhanced what we have to do in the paperwork. So you'd have to provide a map of where the problem is. You have to provide a trade-off. You have to list exactly what that rule is that you want relief from and why it's a hardship. There's specific rules for how they even appeal to us, and then me and the fire chief will have to come up with the findings to show that yes, it is an exception. And it could be something as simple as, we're going to allow this change in the driveway slope because the fire trucks that we have purchased can handle this type of grade. So we can show substantial compliance with the code, then we can allow an exception. And that's really the big word. Putting in a new definition of substantial compliance gives us a little flexibility to say, you're 99% compliant with this road and we have a trade-off that works, you're okay, go ahead and build.
Yeah.
So it's just a longer process, but the flexibility of the fire chief is still there based on what we have available and what the topography really is.
Seems like there might be a need for an expert to help the property owner due to complexity. Maybe a consultant of some kind.
And usually that falls to your local civil engineers.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that I can solicit some to come in and participate in the public training. I know a few of them out there that are very interested in seeing what needs to be done, because roadway design sometimes will need an engineer for the design to take the weight of heavy vehicles.
Yeah, that's my next question is, do these regulations require a certain kind of paving or more paving or
That kind of depends. They give you options. So you're allowed to have a roadway that is not paved. It does have to meet a minimum Class A material, and
that's gravel?
It's a base rock that's a 1/4 inch to 3/4 inch to fine, and so when it's compacted, it can handle quite a lot of weight. They have to be able to show that on a driveway. They can handle, under the new standards, 36,000 pounds of weight. On a roadway, it's 75,000 pounds, and so they can design based on the material, the substrate, and the natural soil. Once that's all compressed together, it equals this weight. And so civil engineers do these designs, and then we end up working with special inspectors for compaction testing to make sure that when we're done, it will handle a heavy fire apparatus. And so there's once again, there are trade-offs here and there, but paving is an option if you want to increase your slope slightly, or I could get way into the weeds on this, but I'll just say that it may not increase paving, but it will increase the design to handle the weight.
That part could get expensive.
It can. And I think that one of the bigger hardships, though, isn't necessarily in the building construction, because many of our subdivisions really comply anyway. It's the creation of new subdivisions further out into the rural areas where you run into dead-end roads that you want to put a subdivision at the end of, but by doing that, or by trying to do that, it triggers a road standard that means that your road is too long to allow that subdivision to be built there the way you want it. So there will be challenges with secondary access roads and dead-end road lengths in some of the remote areas if they want to increase the amount of subdivisions out there that they want to build on. So really in the development of communities, the hardship I think is going to be most keenly recognized than in the infill lots.
What is the present status of development now? Do we have any development applications? If so, how many?
We actually have a lot more building permits for new homes than we expected with the price of lumber and steel going up.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
lumber's gotten pretty crazy as far as the price, but we're regularly getting single-family dwelling permits in. I don't have a total count,
yeah.
but I will say that we're backed up about 3 weeks beyond our standard turnaround times with single families because there's just so many of them, and I could use 2 more people to try and get this done with a 2-week turnaround.
Job opportunity.
Yeah, we're hiring right now. Plans examiner, look it up.
That's cool. So we're looking at less than 1,000 and more than 2.
Well, a couple hundred, I would say at this point. Yeah, in this year, which is we expected a decline. But I'm actually thinking with the way things are going now, if there isn't a recession, we may see another 160 to 200 for the next fiscal year. We do have new subdivisions that are going to be breaking ground in a few areas of the county. There's a few that just started that are ramping up. That we could see a lot of home construction in the near future.
One of the considerations that I guess every community has is what happens to our money. The more inflation we have, the harder it is to do things because it gets too expensive. And of course, you earn more money too. So the state of the national debt can have a profound effect on our local community if it's ignored, which means it gets transmitted into printing money. And printing money is how you create inflation. Not many people know that, but it's true. Now, in addition to the fire safe standards, there's other things that the building department's doing. I think you're requiring sprinklers in homes now, where in the past you didn't do that. And there's some setback requirements, I think, for fire safety also. Is that correct?
Yes. Since 2010, the fire sprinkler requirements have been in the building code, but what we've done is we've recognized that these sprinkler systems are relatively easy to install, and they're at a point now with the installation types and material types that we have streamlined our plan review process. We can look at those in the field instead of requiring them to submit, and we've worked with some of the water purveyors to speed the process up so that they know what size meters they need,
right?
And so the communication and the speed at which we can get these things out is a lot better than it used to be. Setbacks being where they are, the 30-foot rule. One of the misconceptions is they think that you just can't build there, and it doesn't mean that. Planning setbacks are kind of a hard line, but building code and fire code setbacks just mean that if you're too close, you have to do something to the building to keep fire from spreading. So that's the big myth.
Good information.
Yeah.
Doug Oliver, our building official, and we'll have him back, and hopefully bring us good news. Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert.